How's everyone doing today? I know you have nothing better to do today, so I think I'm just going to preach a nice, long 3 or 4 hour sermon today. I know I'm not doing anything today, nothing important going on. It happens, it happens. You know, the ancient Romans, they had this tradition. They had a tradition of every time they would build a new building, or erect a new monument or statue, or especially when they would build a new city gate, they would put an emblem on those structures. They would carve into these structures 4 letters. Anyone know what those 4 letters are? What was it? SPQ. Look at the brain on Nick, huh? SPQR. Senatus Populusque Romanus. And for those of you who don't speak Roman, that is the Senate and the people of Rome. Everything they built in the city of Rome, they put SPQR on. The Senate and the people of Rome. It was an emblem of civic ownership. It was a way to say, collectively, we built this building. Collectively, we did this together. The Senate and the people of Rome. For the first time in 20 years, the city of Boston is going to have a mayor who is not named Menino. And during those 20 years that Tom Menino has been the mayor of Boston, he has set about to place an emblem inside of Boston. An emblem that all Bostonians and everyone who comes to Boston can see. And the emblem that he has placed in Boston is his name. Welcome to South Boston, Mayor Thomas Menino. Now, mind you, Tom Menino did not build South Boston. It was there before he became mayor, but Tom's got his name there on Welcome to South Boston, like he's there welcoming you himself. Welcome to South Boston. Welcome to East Boston, Mayor Tom Menino. Welcome to the West End, Tom Menino. Welcome to Roxbury, Tom Menino. Dorchester, Rosendale, Fort Point. Every place you go in Boston, there's Tom Menino. There to welcome you. The Public Garden, built in 1837. There's Tom Menino's name. Now, he's been mayor a long time, but he was not mayor in 1837 when they built the Public Garden. But there's Tom's name on the sign for the Public Garden. And the Frog Pond. And once you go inside the Frog Pond, there's a nice sign that says, Happy Holidays from the people of Boston and Tom Menino. And when you leave the Frog Pond to go out and slug the meter for your on-street parking, which there is none in Boston, when you go to slug the meter, there's a nice little sign, Tom Menino wishing you happy holidays as you pay for your parking. And don't worry if you get lost. There's maps there provided by, you guessed it, Tom Menino. Your own personal little GPS giving you a map of Boston. And if you have trash in your pocket, don't worry. Tom Menino's name's on the trash cans all around Boston. Keep it clean, he says. Tom Menino has set his name on every... Look at this. These are the Arborway bicycles. This is the chain guard. A chain guard on a bicycle. Tom Menino, 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 Tom Menino. His name is everywhere in Boston. Here's a picture of the plaque of the Ted Williams Tunnel. We built a tunnel dedicated to maybe the greatest baseball player of all time, Ted Williams. But there was room at the bottom here to have another little plaque, Tom Menino. And it's not just Major League Baseball, it's Little League Baseball he's interested in. And playgrounds, and entrances to industrial parks. Any brick wall in Boston, there's a lot of brick walls in Boston, any brick wall that can support a sign, there's going to be a sign with Tom Menino's name on it. It is everywhere. It's even in the carpeting. City Councilman Michael Flaherty, in an interview with the Boston Globe, or the Boston Herald, excuse me, suggested that Tom Menino ought to take the remaining money in his campaign fund, the money he spends to run for office, which he's not going to do anymore, right? The remaining money in his campaign fund, $414,000, they should take that money to help offset, not to pay for it, to help offset the cost of taking down all the Tom Menino signs. A spokesman for the Menino camp said that they would not consider that suggestion and they did not know what they were going to do with the leftover cash yet. In his tenure, there have been placed over, and this is not including the bicycles, there has been placed 2,000 signs in the city of Boston with his name on it. Do some simple math. 2,000 signs, 20 years, that's about 100 years. That's 2 signs a week have been placed in the city of Boston with his name on it. It's going to cost more than $414,000 to take them down. I don't know how much it costs to make those signs. I don't know how much it costs to put those signs up. There was a lot of money spent in order for Tom Menino to put his name, to put his emblem on the city of Boston. When this story first came on the news, I think it was about 10 days ago or so, it really started to agitate me. And listen, and please understand, this is not me bashing Tom Menino. It's not a Tom Menino thing, okay? It's go to any major city in the United States and drive through it. You're going to be welcomed by whoever the mayor is about 1,000 times. Boston's a little over the top. Now, some states have actually outlawed the practice of men putting their names on things. They've outlawed it. New Mexico, Illinois, you can't do that anymore there. But this story really just stuck in my craw, I tell you. It really agitated me. And I think where this agitation really came from was the fact that politicians so often refer to themselves as, I'm just a public servant. I'm a lowly, humble public servant here to serve the people. And this placing of my emblem 2,000 times all over the city of Boston just doesn't strike me as being a lowly, humble servant type of thing to do. It doesn't strike me as something that someone who's just there for me. It sounds like self-promotion to me. It sounds like, hey, everybody, look at me. I'm going to put my name on Boston. Like, I did this. I built the public gardens in 1837. He didn't fund it. He didn't build it. He just happened to be mayor at a time where he could stick a sign in the ground to say, hey, here I am. What passes for humility these days in our world is far from any reasonable definition of the word of humility. Earlier this week, I was doing some internet searches on the topic of humility, and I found an article. It was in like a celebrity-type magazine. And when I read this, I just fell over. It said that celebrities and their publicists, that's right there, we're already in trouble, right? Celebrities and their publicists are searching for new ways for their celebrities to do more charitable works in a way that more people see them as being humble. What? I want you to see how humble I am. And my publicist is going to help me do that. There is a lack of humility in politics. There's a lack of humility in Hollywood. But it can also be a rare commodity in the Christian world as well. Humility can be a hard thing to find in those who see themselves as leaders of God's church, in those members who come to church every Sunday. Humility can be hard to find in those people who show up for every activity and participate in every good work. In fact, I fear that sometimes there's less humility inside of God's church than there is outside of God's church. We're going to look at a story, we're going to look at an episode of Jesus' life today where Jesus addresses this lack of humility in the world. The story starts out by saying on the Sabbath day, when Jesus went to went to eat at a home of a leading Pharisee, the people were watching Jesus very closely. I find this verse, you could preach a whole sermon just on this verse. The first thing that strikes you is what? Where is he? He's eating a meal in the house of a Pharisee, someone who we would recognize as one of his adversaries, right? He's eating with his adversaries. There's a whole sermon there that I can preach. Maybe I'll preach that one immediately following this one. But that catches my eye right away. But there's something else here that really catches my eye. It says that people were watching him very closely. Why do you think they were watching him very closely? Because he was in the house of a Pharisee, right? For those of you who are not hockey fans, please indulge me for a minute here. I like watching hockey, and I watch Bruin games once in a while. But when I know that the Montreal Canadiens are coming to town to play the Bruins, oh, I'm going to watch it. Right? Those games, they get what we in the hockey world say, they get a little chippy. Right? We know there's going to be a confrontation. We know the sticks are going to come up. We know there's going to be some rough stuff going on. In fact, Montreal, Boston, when they play, there's going to be a fight. And there's a certain way that a hockey fight happens. Alex, come up here. There's a certain anatomy of how a hockey fight starts. You notice I picked someone who's only slightly smaller than me. If I'm a hockey player and I want to start a fight, it kind of goes something like this, which is followed by both players grabbing each other's jerseys. Now, if he wants to fight me, what will happen? We'll drop our gloves and we'll fight, right? Now, if he doesn't want to fight me and we're like this, and I still want to fight him, that's when I do one of these. Right? I take a little jab at him. I'm trying to provoke him into a fight with me. And if he still doesn't want to fight, I might rake him. And if he still doesn't want to fight, now, this is going to end one of two ways. We're going to fight, or the referee's going to step in and break it up. But if he doesn't want to fight, he's just going to play dead, right? He's going to play possum. He's going to hold me off, and he's not going to fight. Thanks, Alex. Get out of here. The people at this Sabbath day meal are watching Jesus closely because they know that there's a potential for conflict here. There's going to be a confrontation between him and the Pharisees. And you know what? Jesus, well, he's feeling a little chippy today. Jesus, in this story, we find him being a little chippy, and he tries to pick a fight with the Pharisees. It says, and in front of him was a man, in front of Jesus, there was a man with dropsy. Jesus said to the Pharisees and the experts of the law, is it right or wrong to heal on the Sabbath day? There is Jesus' first little jab. That's Jesus grabbing their jersey and slapping them on the face a little bit. Let's do this. Jesus is in the mood for a tussle. Now, just by way of some biblical education here, dropsy. I've read that 1,000 times in my life, probably. I finally looked up what it was. So I'll share that with you. Dropsy was this condition. There were two different forms of this disease in Palestine. The first one, which is a little rare, was it was a swelling of the arms and legs. Tissue would retain all this fluid, and your hands would swell up so you couldn't move your fingers or your arms. Your feet would swell up. You couldn't walk. That's probably not the dropsy that this guy had because he's at the Pharisee's house. He was able to get to the Pharisee's house for this meal. The other form of dropsy is when your abdomen, because of a liver condition, starts to retain a bunch of fluid and you just begin to be distended. No, you do not have dropsy, John. That is not why your waistline is. And it was a very common condition in Palestine because of malaria and all different kinds of liver infections, and you would get this terrible swelling. So it was very obvious. It was one of these diseases that if you had dropsy, people knew you had it. You either had a big distended belly or your arms and your legs were swollen so bad you couldn't walk. It was obvious that this man had a very, critical, life-affecting disease. And Jesus says to the Pharisees, this man is in obvious pain. He has an obvious disease. Is it right to heal him on the Sabbath? Now, Jesus tries to get this confrontation going with the politicians, celebrity, rock stars of his day. The Pharisees were known people. People knew who they were. Oh, look, they're the Pharisees. There's the experts in the law. They were the people who were maybe lacking a little bit in humility, maybe a little prideful. So he asks this trap question, is it okay to heal on the Sabbath? If they say that it's right to heal on the Sabbath, they're contradicting their own tradition, their own laws of not doing work on the Sabbath. But if they say it's wrong to heal on the Sabbath, well, then they kind of expose themselves as being people who really don't care about man. They really don't have any love for humanity. It kind of exposes them for what they really are. And so the leaders, just like Alex, who didn't want the fight, they do nothing. They would not answer his question. They did not want to engage in this fight, a fight that they probably knew that they were not going to win. So Jesus took the man and healed him and sent him away. There's the second jab right there. Jesus says, you're not going to answer me? Okay, you know what? Then I am going to work on the Sabbath day. I'm going to heal this guy. What do you think about that? Nothing. No response. So Jesus takes the third left jab to the jaw of the Pharisees. Jesus said to the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, if your child or ox falls into a well on the Sabbath day, will you not pull him out quickly? And they could not answer him. The Pharisees had said, if your ox falls into a well, it's okay to pull it out on the Sabbath day. He's kind of really pushing the issue with the Pharisees. He really wants to tussle with them. And you know what? The Pharisees aren't going to take it either. They could not answer, would not answer him. Jesus' logic is so plain and undisputable. It's okay to pull an ox out of a well, but it's not okay to heal a man who's made in the image of God on the Sabbath day? Let me suggest to you today that the Pharisees would not answer these questions. They would not engage in this fight with Jesus because it was their pride that stood in the way. Because if they engaged in this, they would have to humble themselves and say, you know what? Our tradition is wrong. Our thinking is wrong. Jesus, your point is well taken. You are correct, Jesus. They were too prideful to allow Jesus to instruct them in this way. You know, the people at the meal there may have thought that the potential for conflict had passed, that Jesus was done for the day. But then Jesus turns his attention away from the politician, rock star, celebrity group. He turns his attention away from the Pharisees and the experts in the law, and now he kind of sits back and he begins to observe human nature at play. When Jesus noticed that some of the guests were choosing the best places to sit, he told this story. Jesus turns his attention from the people who were already seen as important, who are already the prideful people, and he turns his attention to those people, those other people who are scrambling around trying to climb up the ladder of status and of recognition. The people who are scrambling around trying to find an important place to sit at the meal so that the important people would see them sitting in the important places. And that the other people will look and say, oh, they must be important too because they're sitting in important places near the important people. Jesus sees this, and he gives the people that were there this piece of advice. He says, when someone invites you to a wedding feast, don't take the most important seat, because someone more important than you may have already been invited. The host, who invited both of you, will come to you and say, give this person your seat. Then you will be embarrassed and will have to move to the last place or the lowest place. Why shouldn't you take the most important place in a feast? It's potentially embarrassing. And why is it embarrassing? Because you may be asked to move. And why is that embarrassing? Well, it's embarrassing because who put you in that important place in the first place? I put myself in the important place. I chose to say, you know what? I think I deserve to be sitting up there. I think I deserve to be sitting up there, and you don't. No, you do because you knew SPQR. You've chosen to put yourself above other people. I will honor myself by putting myself in this place of importance. And Jesus says, when you do that, you're setting yourself up for embarrassment. As the host of the feast walks you to your low seat, you can just hear the comments of the people walking by, right? Who did he think he was? It's a little rude awakening for her, isn't it? Now you're going to be slumming with the rest of us down here in the low seats, right? Then Jesus goes on to give them this advice. So when you are invited, go and sit in a seat that is not important. When the host comes to you, he may say, "Friend, move up here to a more important place." Then all the other guests will respect you. What's the difference here? You did not put yourself in that place. The owner of the house, the person who's throwing this feast, has placed you in that place of importance. And someone said, "Hey, if the host thinks he's pretty important, gee, he must be pretty important." But don't put yourself in a place, don't take the important seat. He ends his lesson by making this global statement, this overarching kind of way to live your life. All who make themselves great will be made humble, but those who make themselves humble will be made great. Jesus leaves the choice in our hands. We can control how the owner of the house, in this case God, how he deals with us. It's our choice as to whether the owner of the house has to drag us down from the important place to the low place, or if we'll let the owner of the house lift us up. It's our choice. Over the last, 6 months or so, I think you've probably noticed that this congregation is going through a transformation. We're starting to change things. We're starting to look at the way we do things, and where we see things that maybe aren't working great, we're changing them. We're not just going to keep doing the same thing over and over again. You've noticed some changes in the worship service. We've done things to make the worship service flow better, to make it more focused, to make it a more focused worship for God, and make it more meaningful to those who are coming here to seek God. We're making changes there. I think you've seen changes in some of the programs that we're doing here. Peter has started so many different new programs and new events that are designed to go out into the community to help people. Events that are designed to have more of you participate in order to reach the people out there that are in need. We are making all these type of changes. We're examining every aspect of what we do here to ensure that what we're doing is both in line with God's will and that it's effective. But I will tell you this. We can transform and change all these things. We can go about this process, and unless we do it humbly, unless we do this without a pride entering into this, we will fail. We have to undertake this transformation humbly, both individually and collectively. We have to undertake this in that manner because the owner of the house will bring us low if we do not. If we set about to do this transformation so that we can glorify ourselves or lift ourselves up and say, "Hey, look what we did. Hey, welcome to South Boston, me," right? If we go about to make this about us, instead of raising up the one who is truly worthy of having the important seat, that being Christ, if we're trying to raise ourselves up, we will fail. Over the next months and years, you may be approached to ask to serve in some way, in some capacity. You may be asked to do something that you've never done before, something that you would have never imagined that you would ever do. And it might be something that you may think just isn't the way you want to serve God, that somehow it's beneath your skill level, beneath your position or your rank. Let me ask you, when you're asked to serve, humbly accept it. Humbly accept the acts of service that you're asked to perform here. And I'd ask you to set aside all those prideful pitfalls that we see so many times that will lead to our demise. the pitfall of, why are we changing that? We've never done that here before. In my granddaddy's church, in my grandpa's church, we never did that. Why are we doing it now? Why are we changing anything at all? No one consulted me about changing this. You know what that is? That's pride. It's like somehow we think it's our name on the church. Instead, it becomes less about lifting up Christ and about doing it the way I think it ought to be done. Welcome to the church of the way I want to do it. Welcome to the church of Jay. Yeah, that's what I want. I want it done the way I want it done. I don't want my name on this church. You want your name on this church? Let's follow the example of the Romans. Let's put an inscription on this church. In this church, let's inscribe everything we do with an emblem that says God the Father and His Son. Let's choose the low seat. Let's choose the low seat and raise up Jesus. And then let God lift us up. Let's let God make us successful. Choose the low seat. Now let's all get up off our seats and sing the song that Kevin has selected for us.